Good morning. Today is Sunday, August 28th, the last Sunday in August, and 2022. And we're talking today about our naturally divine spark that's within us, naturally divine individuality, because we are all the same in that we have been imbued with the spark of the divine within us, and yet we're all individuals. So we're going to be exploring how that works. And I'm going to start with an opening reading from Ernest Holmes. And he says, life fills all space and spirit and animates every form. But since you are an individual, even the spirit cannot make the gift of life unless you accept it. Life may have given everything to you, but only that which you accept is yours to use. So say to yourself as I say this, today, I recognize the abundance of life. I animate everything in my experience with this idea. I remember only the good. I accept only the good, and I expect only the good. I give thanks that this good is flowing in ever-increasing volume. I do not withhold good from myself or others, but proclaim that spiritual substance is forever flowing to each and all as daily supply. And so it is. And I want to say a little bit about what spiritual substance is. In the old days, we used to talk about this substance called ether, which was invisible, and it was what was in the air and took form. And that's really what we mean by spiritual substance, that the energy, you could call it energy, you could call it, quanta, particles, tiny, tiny particles. And what we believe is that what we believe and think and expect and pray for takes form from that spiritual substance, which is invisible, and yet it becomes visible. So that's what he means by spiritual substance. So with that, you want to talk a little bit about naturally divine?
No.
Or individuality?
It's funny, we're thinking about individuality. We were talking about it yesterday, and turned the TV on, and there's a commercial for a Cadillac SUV, and they show the Cadillac, and they say for an exciting adventure, for independence, and they list all the qualities that are human qualities that are going to become your qualities once you have this Cadillac. Which immediately I wanted to go out and buy the Cadillac because I want all those qualities. But what I was struck with is that they're inferring that if you have the Cadillac, these are all of your qualities, but what they don't say is you can't go off the road. And so why that became really important for me when I thought about it was, interestingly enough, we're all individual. We all have unique qualities to us, but we are all in it together, and we all have to share the same roads. And so that distinction between individuality and oneness with everyone else for it to work is a real interesting paradox, I think. And so anyway, I wanted to start off with thinking about how we're separate and how we're one, how we are one and uniquely one. The other piece of that I was really struck with too is we look at nature programs a lot because we like them. And what you notice is that in order for a species to survive, there has to be a variety in the DNA. And if there are too many animals inbreed, which means that they all share the same DNA, it doesn't take long before the species is done in because one virus wipes out all of them. So here we have this wonderful situation in which diversity is critical, but so is connection and oneness and sameness. And so I just thought it was just so fascinating commentary on the necessity of realizing our individuality while at the same time realizing our togetherness, our joined consciousness.
Well, in fact, we said it's necessary for our survival. It's interesting that it's really interesting that as a species we become weaker unless we get a good intermixture of DNA, and we found it this is with human beings also. That in days of old, when people were expected to marry and mate within their tribe, it gets the gene pool too small, and that as you intermix with other groups of people, including other races of people, you strengthen the health and the beauty of the results. So it's really interesting that we are stronger by mixing
Right.
and mixing the individualities of others into our one. But I would like to get back to this concept of being naturally divine.
Yeah.
Because when I first heard that concept was when I first went to a Science of Mind center, which is what we used to call our centers, and now we call them centers for spiritual living. And so when I first became aware of it, I thought, well, everybody, even those that are badly behaved, yes, everybody, although they may not know it, they may not be aware of it. And if they are not aware of it, they will not act as if the divine is within them. And what I noticed for me, because I went from agnosticism, I went from Catholicism to agnosticism to spirituality awareness. And when I came back to the spiritual awareness that the divine was in me, and everybody else, even if I didn't like their behavior, it only became common sense to act accordingly, to act as if love is who I am and what I am. And it made the world a more wonderful place. Suddenly, animals and nature was sacred, and everybody was sacred. And even if they were behaving like a brat, the divine is within them. And it calls forth the best in you. And life just became sweeter and more beautiful. And in the last 10 days, I lost my son. He died. And it's a huge loss. It's a huge loss. But it is such a reward. It's such a benefit to know and believe that he didn't die. His body was laid down, but he still lives in spirit. Nothing ever dies in spirit. If you're divine, you are eternal. He is eternal. And in fact, I feel his presence and I hear him talking with me, and I'm hearing it validated from other people who are experiencing him in interesting ways. And so that's a huge comfort. It's a huge comfort to say, my son laid his body down. He has not died. As a matter of fact, he is free. He is free and he is happy and he is healthy in spirit. And this was not a terrible thing to happen. It wasn't a physical sense, and there are many people hurting because he's not here with them anymore. But I was hearing this morning from him that this was no terrible fate. This was exactly what was supposed to happen. And yes, there are people who will miss him and who will be hurt, but it just is. And when we know that he's eternal and expanding and growing in consciousness himself, then we just embrace and love that is happening.
When that you're able to communicate with him and he's able to communicate with you, which gives you such great comfort, and it gives me comfort as well, because it just reaffirms what we both know. What's important is that some of us, I think, have an idea of an afterlife, which is just an idea, not something we really believe. And because we don't really believe it, it doesn't have much depth. It doesn't allow us to enjoy the victory of ongoing life. And I think, that gift to you of the belief you have is really, really critical to how we deal with this entire situation called life. A lot of people don't face this idea of death ever. And because they don't face it ever, they have these really primitive ideas, kind of like Santa Claus and Christmas. There's a heaven, it's just above the clouds, there's a hell, and we don't believe in any of that. And the reason we don't believe in any of that is because there's lots and lots of information out there on the web and everywhere else you can think of, and in books, to document that life continues without punishment, without abuse, without fire and brimstone, and without clouds and a vegetarian diet, although that's possible. But what's really, it's just so important for you, I think, each of you and for each of us, to dig into this whole business of what do we believe and how substantial is it, and how can we make that stronger, and how can we really gather all of that up, because there'll be a time when that's necessary, when we really need that. And that time that we really need it is not now. It's when someone passes, it's when something happens. It would be a tragedy for us if it weren't for what we also know to be the truth.
Right. And so when I say this, I want to be clear that this does not mean that I don't grieve
No,
and cry and
clearly,
feel the
clearly.
loss at times. It's just a wonderful comfort to know that that he still lives. You will still live. So when we talk about naturally divine, that the spark of divine is within everyone, that's what we mean. We mean you're eternal. You don't, you really, yes, you will lay this body down, but you are eternal. So I wanted to read a couple of quotes from people that believed this also. Teilhard de Chardin was a European priest, anthropologist, and he was just full of wisdom. But he taught that every subatomic particle is filled with Christ. We consist of trillions of particles assembled by God or by the natural forces that God created. We are saturated with the divine. So that is from a Catholic priest. And I wanted to share another reading by Ernest Holmes. It was in the first edition, the 1926 edition of The Science of Mind. And he says, "This I saw, or else some inner presence made it known to me. The universe is filled with life. The air, the sky, the sea teem with intelligence, with majesty and might. And deep within me, some subtle inner sight beholds and sees, comprehends and knows the all. It neither fears nor falters, but answers the divine call to be as one beyond the bounds of time and space, to overcome the bondage of the human race and leap with trust undaunted, free into the deeps of that infinite sea, whose waters, calm, are ready to receive those who in simple faith believe." Now, I can tell you that Ernest Holmes was true to his word because he taught spiritual mind treatment, which is affirmative prayer. He taught that as we believe and expect, so do we experience.
So shall we receive.
So shall we receive. It is done unto you according to your belief. He taught all of that. And yet, when he was in the hospital, having had a stroke and basically on his deathbed, I believe he was 72 years old. That seems young to us today, but he died in 1960. And the hospital filled with all the practitioners he had trained to do affirmative prayer for him to not die. And he sent them all away. Go home. He said, go home, because he was not afraid of dying. He was not afraid of going. And I guess he believed he was, and he did. So this is very important for us to realize. And yet we are all individuals. And that's a magnificent thing. It's a magnificent thing. And as the first reading I shared said, God can't even give you life unless, as an individual, you decide, by life, I mean another lifetime or a lifetime here on earth, unless you agree. So you participate in it. So I'd like you to own the magnificence of this, that the divine spark lives within you.
Always.
And yet you are at choice with so much of what happens in your life based on what you can believe and accept for yourself. So it's important to believe and affirm that you expect good things to happen. You expect your creations to be successful. And that is your individuality. Bob is creative in ways that I am not. And I'm creative in ways he's not, in some areas with,
Sure.
yeah, with computer things and whatnot, when I can get things to work.
Which, by the way, I cannot help but notice that I keep disappearing and reappearing and disappearing and reappearing. And it sort of goes along with our talk, which is, you see, the interesting thing is, even when I disappear, I'm actually still here. I think somehow this message is,
it's being illustrated.
Right. And if every time I disappeared on the screen, you said, he's not here anymore, where has he gone? He's on the other side. No, I'm actually here all the time. And I think it is that simple, that we're here, we are here, and we're not going to not be here. And I wonder, though, how does that change how you are in your life on a day-to-day basis? If you think about, I'm here all the time and I will always be here. as opposed to, well, I'm only going to be here for a little while. Just get what you can, do what you can, do what you want, whatever happens, happens. It changes, I think, what you do and how you behave with people when you realize that all of the relationships we have and all the things that we're doing are all connected to one another, and that we're going to continue, if we don't completely disappear, we're going to continue being together in one form or another. And so we have a responsibility to ourselves and to each other to figure out how to be together in a way that works for everyone.
So I think if you'll try not to move, we might keep you in focus.
Well, if you move, it also does the same thing. So this is I think next week what we're going to try to do is I'll create a backdrop that we can have behind us, so we won't have a virtual background, because this is I don't know where I go when I disappear.
So I want to say a few words, because I don't want to mislead people about, we don't understand, I don't understand why some people hear from their loved ones on the other side and others do not. Some experience a sensation. That there are 5 clair talents. There's clairvoyance, which is people see spiritually, they see with their spiritual eyes what's not really what their physical eyes can see. There's clairaudience, which is what you can hear, what's not being spoken into your ear, but you hear it internally in your mind. And that's what I'm able to do sometimes. There's clairsentient, which is that you feel the person. And my sister has felt my son. She feels his sweet presence. So she's clairsentient. These are talents that I think that we all will develop eventually. But in the process, we're in our evolution, some are developing some and some are developing others. Bob often knows things and doesn't know how he knows them. That's claircognizant. And he doesn't know how he knows it, but he got it in his cognition. And there's one more that I can't seem to place right now, but so don't get frustrated if you would like to do this and can't seem to have it happen. The one thing that I would recommend is just focus on your own spiritual growth. Mm-hmm. And the main way to do that is to meditate. In other words, when we are busy listening to our own thoughts, our own self-talking all the time in our minds, you can't hear anything else but yourself talking. So in meditation, you learn to just breathe and focus on your breathing. And that kind of slows the thoughts down until they still. And at that point, then you can hear or be aware of other things. So that's why meditation is so central to spiritual development. And we actually call it spiritual awareness, because you never will be more spiritual than you are right now, but you will be more aware of yourself as a spiritual person.
There are many channels being broadcasted over the airwaves that you don't get, because either you haven't subscribed, and some of us haven't subscribed even when we don't realize we haven't subscribed. Some of us have subscribed, but there's a need to make some adjustments in the receiver so that we can actually then receive what it is we're getting. But if the signals are out there, the information is there, and the fact that we can't always receive it or we're not always aware of it doesn't mean that it's not there. Another part of that is too that dreaming can be really helpful as far as having the boundaries between this dimension and the next be broken. Is often when we're dreaming or when we're asleep, we are able to have that breakthrough. We're able to have that connection.
That's true. Yeah. And when I first started learning to meditate, I was told to meditate first thing in the morning when you get up, before, well, you might go to the bathroom first, but after that, before a cup of coffee, before anything, just sit in the quiet.
Before coffee?
Yeah, dark even, and because your mind is not racing at that time.
Yeah.
The book that I read said that's when you're closest to God. Well, I think it means that's when you're closest to your own, your spiritual self, and your mind's not racing. You're not problem solving. And so that's one of the easiest times to meditate. Some people meditate first thing in the morning and last thing at night, because that also calms them before going to bed and stops that worry mind process that is usually called the problem solving mind. That's usually going to town then. And so you sleep better. So I do try to quiet my mind before I go to sleep, quiet my worry mind. And that helps me listen and hear. So we are all divine. Imagine that. Isn't that something? Someone asked of some psychic medium or someone like that, even Hitler, even someone like Hitler, once he dies and makes this transition, that he's accepted and forgiven and goes on to evolve. And she was told, yes, even Hitler. So
I love Mother Teresa, who said she treated Jesus in all of his many disguises.
Yes, that's exactly what she said. With all, some people ask her, how could you stand to work with these dead and dying people? She would take poor dying people off the streets. I think she was in Calcutta, India. And that was just, they were really following the caste system, and they believed that was okay and natural, and they were untouchable. You weren't supposed to touch them. And she thought it was unacceptable. She was European, and she just provided a place with a bed and shelter for them to die. She wasn't trying to save their lives. She was trying to let them die with dignity. And she said, I minister to Jesus in all his distressing disguises. Jesus said, wherever two more are gathered, there am I also. And he also said, whatever you do to any other person, you do unto me. So that's where she was getting that. Jesus, the Christ means the God essence, and it was in him, and it is in all of us. And so when you recognize it, you start acting that way. And I can tell you, one of Gandhi's statements that I love is, he says, be the peace you want to see in the world. Because conflict is so easy. People are so sure they've been done wrong, and the other person needs to be maligned or punished in some way. And it just adds to conflict. What we need is just to know everybody makes mistakes, love them, let them be, and know that the spark of divine is within them, and they may not be aware of it yet. They have to wake up to that yet. So I think we're out of time.
Yeah.
And so shall we end with a treatment?
Let's do that.
Let's do that. If you'll join me.
I don't
Keep
care.
disappearing on today. So let's go within and know the truth of our being, which is that there is one power, one presence, one divine light in the universe, and we are a part of it.
There are no extras. We are not an extra. There's no extras in the universe. All of us are here on purpose for a reason. All of us are here as contributors. All of us are here to make a difference and make a difference in our being.
And so we know, as we love and accept others, knowing they are different from us in their individuality and the same as us in their spirituality. We love them, we accept them, we forgive them when we feel wronged. And we know that forgiveness is for our peace of mind, that we may be the peace in the world. So we give thanks, we release, and together we say,
and so it is.
So it is.
So it is.
So now we are going to do a screen share here.
If we can.
If everything will work. And we want to start with letting you know how you may support our ministry. If you feel helped, encouraged, we're available to pray for you, to do affirmative treatment for you. Our practitioners are available to do that. Also, they are listed on this first page of our web page, which is CSL, that stands for Center for Spiritual Living, palmbeaches.org. And this is the first page. And on it, you have the link here. I can't show it to you because this is a photo of it, but the link to join us on our Sunday mornings. And if you click on the ways to donate, it lists ways that you may make a donation that goes right into our Center for Spiritual Living bank account. And if you were just to scroll this page up, you would see a list of our practitioners at the bottom. So we like to do this affirmation at this time. This is an affirmative prayer for all of our enrichment. We know that God is not limited, and there is no lack of funds or anything that we need for our good. So say with me, and it starts with the word my investment. My investment
today
is made
with
the full realization
realization
that God
God is the
is the
source.
source of my supply and returns it to me,
Me
enriched and multiplied.
and multiply.
And
So
so
it
it
is.
is.
What
And
it-
I am going
I don't know
to,
whether we had the music up or not. I didn't see it behind there.
I'm going to now stop the share. I'm going to stop the recording.